The Galactic Dominion's War Council chamber was a place of cold efficiency and calculated destruction. Every decision made here had led to the rise and fall of empires. Every war plotted within these walls had ended with a conquered species kneeling before the Dominion's rule. The galaxy had obeyed them for centuries. But today the Dominion made a mistake. And everyone in the room was about to realize it. The broadcast that changed everything. High Admiral Zaltarin stood at the center of the chamber, his scaled fingers tapping impatiently against the war table. Holograms flickered in front of him. A new species had been discovered. The humans. Primitive. Unremarkable. Weak. At least, that's what the Dominion's analysts had concluded. The humans had only recently broken into interstellar travel. Their ships were clunky, inefficient, and severely underarmed compared to the Dominion's war fleets. In short, they were insignificant. An insignificant species did not get a choice. The Council had already voted. Humanity would be absorbed into the Dominion. Their worlds would be claimed, their military dismantled, their governments dissolved. Like countless species before them. It should have been a formality. Another conquest. Another victory. So why then? Why did the High Admiral feel uneasy? Because of the humans' response. Humanity's last words to the Dominion. The war chamber's massive holoscreen flickered to life. The human representative appeared. A male. Calm. Unshaken. The Dominion had expected fear. They had expected pleading, surrender, desperate negotiations. Instead, the human leaned forward, adjusting the cuffs of his jacket. And he smiled. Final decision then? He asked. His voice was steady, unreadable. High Admiral Zaltarin's mandibles clicked in irritation. Your species has no standing in this council. You will comply with the Dominion's demands, or you will be erased. The human tilted his head slightly. Then he nodded. All right. Silence. The War Council waited. Waited for the pleas for mercy. Waited for the desperate bargaining. Waited for the terror. Instead, the human just smiled again. And then he said something that sent a chill through the room. Congratulations. Zaltarin's eyes narrowed. What? The human's smile widened just slightly. You just declared war on the deadliest species in the galaxy. The holoscreen cut to black. And in that moment, every Dominion strategist realized something was very, very wrong. The first clue that something was off. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Dominion tacticians immediately began issuing orders. Mobilizing fleets, preparing for what should have been a simple planetary invasion. And yet, something wasn't right. Sir, one of the analysts muttered, scanning his data feeds. We can't locate their fleets? Zaltarin stiffened. What? The analyst swiped through multiple displays, frustration creeping into his voice. We tracked their ships before, but now? It's like they've vanished? The war room fell silent. Because that was impossible. The Dominion controlled every major trade route, every hyperspace lane, every surveillance grid across the sector. No species, not even the most advanced empires, could hide from their scanners. And yet, the humans were gone. The unexplained battles. The Dominion's invasion fleet arrived at the first human colony within hours. The plan was simple. Overwhelm. Crush resistance. Establish control. The fleet dropped from hyperspace, weapons primed, warships deployed, only to find nothing. The planet was empty. Not destroyed. Not in ruins. Just empty. No bodies. No wreckage. No sign of conflict. As if the humans had never been there to begin with. And then the distress signals started coming in. Not from the human worlds. But from Dominion ships. The ambush that should have been impossible. The first fleet to go dark was the 72nd Armada, a battle group of over 100 Dominion warships. One moment their signal was strong. The next? Silence. No distress calls. No debris fields. No hyperspace trails. It was as if the entire fleet had been erased from existence. And then, a single transmission came through. A lone Dominion officer. His voice shaking. They aren't running? Pause. They're hunting us. Static. Signal lost. And that was when the Dominion finally understood. They had made a mistake. The deadliest species in the galaxy wasn't what they expected. The Dominion had fought thousands of wars. They had crushed rebellions, exterminated species, annihilated civilizations. They had always been the hunters. Always the strongest. Until now. Because humanity wasn't fighting like a species that wanted to win. They were fighting like a species that had already decided the war was over. They didn't hold territory. They didn't defend planets. They didn't build fortresses. Instead they vanished, and then they struck. A lone Dominion dreadnought, destroyed without a trace. A war station hacked, its defenses turned against itself. A Dominion outpost, abandoned, its garrison missing. Every attack was surgical, precise, devastating. And every time the Dominion thought they had found the humans, they were already gone, waiting, watching, preparing for the next strike. The final message. A new transmission appeared on the war table. A single video. Zaltarin tapped the display. The screen flickered. And once again the same human from before appeared. Still calm. Still smiling. Enjoying the war so far? Zaltarin's claws tightened. What are you? He growled. The human tilted his head. The last species you should have pissed off. Zaltarin snarled. You think you can hide forever? The human's smile widened. And then for the first time his voice grew cold. Who said we were hiding? The screen cut to static. And that was when the Dominion truly understood. The war wasn't coming. It had already begun. And humanity? Humanity was already winning. The Dominion War Council had faced wars before. They had conquered thousands of species, crushed empires that once thought themselves invincible, and rewritten history with the ashes of those who opposed them. But never, not once, had they faced a war like this. Because this was not a war. It was a massacre. And for the first time in history, the Dominion was the prey. The first true counterattack. Admiral Zaltarin stood before the holographic war table, his claws twitching with barely contained rage. His fleet commanders stood around him, each one displaying signs of unease. They were the best strategists in the Dominion. They had crushed rebellions before they had a chance to breathe. And yet, for the past 12 cycles they had been losing ships. Not in battles. Not in skirmishes. They were simply vanishing. A ship would send a routine report patrolling Dominion space. And then nothing. No distress calls. No explosions. No wreckage. Just silence. Like they had never existed. And the only trace left behind? A single transmission. 4 words. See you very soon. Zaltarin slammed his clawed fist against the war table. Enough of this cowardice. His officers flinched. The admiral's voice was raw, his mandibles clicking with anger. We are the Dominion. We do not run. We do not hide. We do not lose. He turned, glaring at his fleet commanders. We will hunt these humans down and we will erase them. He pointed to Admiral Kavor, one of his most ruthless tacticians. Deploy the Third Armada. I want every ship scanning for hyperspace distortions. Find them. Kavor nodded sharply. And when we do? Zaltarin's voice was ice. Burn them. The trap they never saw coming. The Third Armada deployed immediately. A force of 700 warships spread across dozens of sectors. They would sweep the void clean. They would flush the humans out of hiding. It was the largest single military operation in decades. And for a moment, it worked. They found something. A lone human vessel drifting in space. A small warship, not even a fraction of the size of a Dominion dreadnought. No weapons powered. No defenses activated. A trap, obviously. But Zaltarin didn't care. He ordered an immediate strike. 50 Dominion warships closed in, surrounding the human vessel from all angles. A transmission was sent. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. There was no reply. Only a single response on their war table. A text transmission. 2 words. Too late. Then suddenly, the entire Third Armada lost power. Every warship. Every defense system. Every single engine and weapon shut down. Zaltarin staggered back, his claws tightening. What is happening? The war table flickered, error messages flashing across the displays. And then, the human ship vanished. No hyperspace signature. No jump drive activation. Gone. And then the Dominion ships started exploding. One by one. From the inside. Zaltarin could only watch as his warships, his great armada, were torn apart without a single enemy shot fired. And in that moment he realized the truth. The humans hadn't just been hunting them. They had been waiting. The fleet that should not exist. Zaltarin stared in horror as his ships were torn apart. He had seen battles lost before. He had seen fleets decimated. But this was something else. Because there was no enemy fleet. No warships. No battle formations. No human presence at all. Only the void. Only whispers of an enemy that should not exist. And then, the Dominion's long-range scanners detected something. A fleet. Not theirs. Not from any known species in the galaxy. And what was worse, it was not appearing on their tactical readouts. No energy signatures. No hyperspace trails. Nothing. But the shape of the vessels, cold, dark, and moving with terrifying precision, was unmistakable. Humanity's true warships had arrived. And they had been watching the entire time. Zaltarin's breath hitched. What are they? His science officer's voice was shaky. Those ships, they shouldn't exist. Zaltarin turned sharply. Explain? The officer swallowed hard. They don't match any human schematics we've ever seen. He brought up an analysis. The ships were sleek, black as the void itself, their designs impossibly efficient, moving with flawless coordination as if they were not individual vessels, but a single entity. And then the final detail appeared. An energy signature. One that should not have been possible. Because it wasn't just new technology. It was far, far older. Older than humanity itself. And that was when Zaltarin realized the most terrifying truth of all. The humans had not built these ships. They had found them. The impossible discovery. A transmission came through. Not from the humans. From the war archives of the Dominion itself. A classified file sealed for over 10,000 years. Zaltarin read the title. And his blood ran cold. Project Legacy, the Lost Fleet. He stared in horror. This fleet, the one humanity was now using, was not a new development. It was a legend. An ancient weapon from a war that predated the Dominion itself. A fleet that had once wiped entire civilizations from history. And somehow the humans had found it. And they had learned to use it. Zaltarin's claws dug into the metal of the war table. We were never fighting humans, were we? His officers remained silent. Because now they all understood. Humanity wasn't just another species. They were something else entirely. And the worst part? They had been playing this war like a game. From the very start. The war room was silent. High Admiral Zaltarin's claws trembled as he stared at the classified transmission. The Lost Fleet. An ancient force thought to be legend. A myth buried in the darkest parts of Dominion history. And now, humanity was using it. The council begins to fracture. Zaltarin turned sharply toward his commanders. We need to regroup. We need... No. The voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Zaltarin snapped his head around, his golden eyes narrowing. The one who spoke was Grand Strategist Viacor, one of the most ruthless minds in the Dominion. We do not run, Viacor growled. We double our forces. We strike back harder. Several warlords nodded in agreement. But others? Others shifted uneasily. Zaltarin could see it in their eyes. Doubt. Fear. No one had ever seen the Dominion like this before. And that was the first sign that they had already lost. The first attack on a Dominion core world. A distress signal flared across the war table. Another fleet, gone. This time? It wasn't just ships disappearing. It was a planet. Dominion High World Zyphar 9 had gone dark. One of the central trade hubs of the Dominion. Billions of lives. Not destroyed. Not bombarded. Gone. Zaltarin could barely breathe. His claws dug into the war table. Deploy all remaining fleets to Dominion space. Nothing gets through? A commander shook his head. Sir, something already has. The fleet humanity was never supposed to have. The war room's holographic display flickered, bringing up a live feed from the outer defenses of the Dominion home sector. The black void of space stretched beyond the station's view, until the stars themselves seemed to vanish. A fleet emerged from the abyss. Not jumping from hyperspace. Not appearing from a known route. They simply arrived. Ships unlike anything in the Dominion archives. No visible engines. No energy readings. No communication attempts. Just black, jagged warships with glowing crimson fractures along their hulls, like they had been rebuilt from something ancient. Something far worse. And at the head of it all, a single massive warship. Larger than any Dominion dreadnought. Its hull was carved with runes that the Dominion's translators could not decipher. It had no known markings. But the message was clear. This was humanity's fleet now. And they had come for war. The first shot. Zaltarin's second-in-command, Admiral Kavor, stepped back in horror. What are they? No one answered. Because no one knew. And then, without warning, the Dominion's defense stations exploded. Not fired upon. Not bombarded. They simply detonated. Like something had infiltrated them from the inside. The Dominion's first line of defense had been erased, before they had even fired a single shot. And that was when the real fear set in. This wasn't a war. It was an execution. The battle that should have been a slaughter. The Dominion's home fleets surged forward, warships deploying in perfect formations. Zaltaran watched as thousands of ships moved as one, a tide of destruction that had crushed countless civilizations before. But this time, it did not matter, because the moment they engaged, they were already dead. The unnatural movements of the human fleet. The first Dominion battlecruisers opened fire. Energy blasts ripped across the void, thousands of torpedoes seeking targets. And yet, not a single shot hit. The human warships moved in ways that defied logic. They did not dodge. They did not evade. They simply were not where the Dominion expected them to be. Zaltaran's mandibles clenched. How are they doing that? No one answered, because no one knew. The final phase. The human fleet did not return fire immediately. They let the Dominion exhaust themselves. Shot after shot. Fleet after fleet. Until the void was filled with the remains of a wasted assault. And then they attacked. The death of the Dominion's mightiest warships. The black warships surged forward. Weapons firing in bursts that left nothing behind. A Dominion dreadnought, the pride of the Armada, was hit once. And then it was gone. No explosion. No wreckage. Nothing. As if it had never existed. Zaltaran's breath hitched. His fleets were being erased. Not defeated. Erased. The message from the human commander. Then a transmission came through. A human. The same one from before. Still calm. Still smiling. You look surprised. Zaltaran's rage boiled over. What are you? The human's smile widened. And then he answered. The truth humanity had been hiding. We were never just another species, Admiral. The war room fell into a dead silence. The human leaned forward, his expression turning dangerous. We are something far worse. Zaltaran's claws curled against the war table. How did you get those ships? The human's grin widened. We didn't build them. The room froze. Zaltaran's heart pounded. Then where did they come from? And the human gave the answer that shattered everything. The oldest war in the galaxy. We didn't find them, the human whispered. They found us. A heavy silence filled the war room. The human leaned back. You thought we were young, small, insignificant. He gestured toward the war-torn battlefield, where Dominion fleets were being consumed. You never asked the real question, did you? Zaltaran's voice was barely a whisper now. What question? The human's eyes gleamed. What do you think happened to the species that came before you? Zaltaran's blood ran cold. Because now he finally understood. Humanity wasn't fighting to win this war. They were fighting to finish an older one. One that had started long before the Dominion existed. And now it was the Dominion's turn to disappear. The Dominion was breaking. Once they had been the undisputed rulers of the galaxy. Once their fleets had crushed entire civilizations before their enemies even had a chance to resist. Once they had believed themselves invincible. But now they were losing. And not in a way they understood. Not in battles fought and lost. Not in sieges and retreats. They were simply disappearing. And for the first time in their history, the Dominion knew what fear felt like. The last stand of the Dominion. High Admiral Zaltaran stood at the war table, his claws digging into the metal surface. His fleets were in ruins. His empire was fracturing. And worst of all, he still didn't understand what he was fighting. The lost fleet. Humanity had found it. And they were using it to wipe the Dominion from existence. Zaltaran turned toward his remaining warlords, his voice cold. What's left? The response was grim. 4 fleets. 1 planetary stronghold. And whatever forces we can still rally to defend the homeworld. Silence. The Dominion had once commanded thousands of fleets. Now they were reduced to scraps. This wasn't war. This was a slow execution. And it was almost over. The arrival of the end. The final defense fleet gathered over the Dominion homeworld. Every remaining warship, every remaining warrior, every desperate last effort was thrown together in a final stand. And then, the humans arrived. Or rather their ghosts did. The lost fleet materialized from the void, its black hulls gliding toward the Dominion's last bastion. They did not hail. They did not speak. They did not warn. They simply approached. And Zaltaran finally understood the truth. This was not just humanity's fleet. This was something far worse. Something older than both species. Something that had been waiting. And now it had returned. The last transmission. A Dominion warship opened fire first. The attack was futile. The Lost Fleet did not dodge. It absorbed the attack like it wasn't even there. And then, it answered. Not with weapons. Not with explosions. But with a single transmission, broadcasted across the entire Dominion network. A voice. Human. But not quite. It echoed, layered with something else. Something inhuman. And the words it spoke would haunt the Dominion forever. Your cycle is over. The war room fell into a dead silence. Zaltarin felt his throat tighten. He didn't know why, but those words, they felt final. Like something ancient had just judged them unworthy of existence. And then, the Lost Fleet opened fire. The erasure of a species. The Dominion's final warships never stood a chance. Their fleets vanished in an instant. Not destroyed. Erased. Like they had never existed. Zaltarin watched in horror as his empire, the mightiest force in the galaxy, collapsed into nothing. His homeworld shields flickered, failed. The Lost Fleet did not land. It did not invade. It simply drifted above the planet, and then the stars disappeared. A dark void expanded outward, swallowing the Dominion's last stronghold. Swallowing their history. Swallowing everything they had ever been. And Zaltarin finally understood. This had never been a war. This had never been about humans conquering the Dominion. This had been about something far worse. This had been about finishing what had been started long before either species existed. And now, as the void claimed the Dominion's last world, Zaltarin let out one final whisper. What have we unleashed? And then he was gone. The war that was never really a war. The galaxy never learned what happened to the Dominion. One day they had been the most powerful empire in existence. The next, they had never existed at all. There was no wreckage. No ruins. No remains. Only a few broken transmission logs, cut off mid-sentence. Only a few scattered survivors from distant outposts, claiming that something had come for them in the night. And one last recorded message. A human voice. Still calm. Still smiling. Congratulations. You just declared war on the galaxy's deadliest species. And you lost. Epilogue, the new power of the galaxy. The Lost Fleet never stopped moving. It did not return to human space. It did not settle in Dominion territory. It simply continued outward, into the unknown. And the rest of the galaxy watched in terrified silence. No one dared pursue it. No one dared ask what it was searching for. Because now they all understood. Humanity was never just another species. They were something else entirely. Something that had been waiting for a reason to return. And now that they had, the galaxy would never be the same.